Freedom Flotilla Madleen has taken off, and now it's on its way to the Gaza Strip. Usually, when a flotilla goes to Gaza, that shows you the level that the world has reached, the level that the countries have reached. Every country under the sun is unable to force aid into the Gaza Strip. We're talking about the world, as in everyone. Countries close to Palestine, countries far away, countries that constantly talk to us about human rights and all of that stuff. No one is able to get aid to people. People are being starved to death. Therefore, individuals, started to take action to try and break the siege of the people of Gaza. These people are not politically affiliated with anyone. From their perspective, they're only trying to implement the basic humanitarian thing. Get aid to starving population, children, women, elderly. And despite all of this talk about some aid going inside of the Gaza Strip, the Israelis are committing massacres with United States mercenaries right next to them. But now, of course, this ship has sailed, this flotilla, this Freedom Flotilla Madleen, looking to get basic stuff in. This is something symbolic, by the way. I mean, a ship, even if you take like 3 or 10 ships, it's not going to be enough. Gaza needs a lot of aid, but these people are trying to do something symbolic against the inaction of countries that have the power and the means to break the siege of the Gaza Strip. But now Israel is threatening to arrest and deport its members. Not just threats to deport and arrest its members, but also potentially take military action. So there were reports that there were drones hovering over this flotilla. People who were on board were already saying all of this. And if Israel wants to arrest and deport members of this flotilla, they would have to carry out a military operation. They would have to send their elite forces to go on that ship, force it to stop, potentially shoot to warn, get in people inside of it, force it to go to one of the ports that Israel controls, and then arrest these people and potentially kill some of them, by the way. Now, these people who are on the flotilla, I have a good reason to believe that they already know that they are at risk. It's a very big risk that they're taking, but that shows you the nature of the people who are willing to take that risk and willing to sacrifice their safety, their comfort zone from whichever country they're going to, just to help the people. But from an Israeli perspective, they, of course, do not want to allow that, and they do not want it to set a precedent. Because if this flotilla succeeds, there will be potentially many more flotillas to follow. However, the risk is there. Israel is preparing to take action, and Israel will most likely take action unless that is relevant and the required pressure is applied on them diplomatically and from the countries that are relevant, countries that these people are coming from too, so that they do not do anything to these people. However, again, that is very unlikely. Moving on to the next subject that I wanted to talk to you about. Israel is very well known to support terrorist groups. Israel is a terrorist state at the end of the day, so it's totally normal and natural for it to support terrorist groups. Israel, after the Hamas movement won the Palestinian elections in 2006, they started to support radical movements, radical terror organizations inside of the Gaza Strip to try and topple Hamas, take Hamas down and bring these people to take their place. One of these movements was called Jaysh al-Islam. They call themselves Jaysh al-Islam, or the Army of Islam. They kidnapped Alan Johnston, who was a BBC reporter, and they kidnapped other journalists as well. Hamas gave them an ultimatum and eventually released Alan Johnston. At the time, the BBC reporter, alongside others too. And after Hamas fully took control over Gaza after multiple coup attempts taken by previous members of the Palestinian Authority, now under the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in the West Bank, things became more under control when it comes to Israel. However, now, in the past few months, the Palestinian resistance in Gaza, it has been declaring. Many times they declared that Israel is supporting criminal elements inside of Gaza and organizations of terror to take down the democratically elected government, the authorities inside of the Gaza Strip, and also loot the aid and wreak havoc. It started by multiple Israeli attempts. Now, for people to get a better context here, Israel and multiple people inside of Israel had a plan to divide the Gaza Strip and also the West Bank into what they call emirates. Basically, a few tribes controlling, having territories that they control, and they wouldn't necessarily have any problems with Israel attacking them, so that the Palestinians can't have even a state in the West Bank and inside of the Gaza Strip. Now, after the genocide began, Israel saw that the Palestinian population and all of the people of the Gaza Strip are sticking to their principles, to their land, to their rights, and into their resistance, their right to resist the occupation, which is enshrined in international law. That frustrated Israel very much. Therefore, they resorted to making certain offers for tribal leaders inside of the Gaza Strip to try and convince them to start accepting the aid that's coming from outside of Gaza into the Gaza Strip. Why? Because Israel did not want any aid going into the Gaza Strip to be adequate, to be enough and sustainable. And they did not want the authorities of the Gaza Strip to manage and deliver that aid accordingly, although we're talking most likely about international organizations such as the UNRWA and other organizations too. That failed, and there were multiple statements coming from the leaders of the Gaza Strip in the community, the significant figures that Israel approached, saying that we're not interested in having any aid going into the Gaza Strip unless it's aid directly dealing with the relevant authorities, because at the end of the day, we are the people of Gaza, and the authorities in Gaza, they have been elected by us, and we can't go against the resistance, especially during the time of war. Now, in recent weeks, we've been talking about this, and I've shared a couple of videos with you of the Palestinian resistance targeting elements working with the IDF. Palestinians who were, some of them were imprisoned, some of them were criminal elements, some of them from radical groups, and some of them from the previous Palestinian Authority before Hamas was elected inside of the Gaza Strip. Israel, after the 7th of October, targeted the prison of Gaza deliberately to let these criminal gangs out. They targeted them, and then they started dealing with them. Now, the way that Israel deals with them is directly through support. Now, there were previous notions that this support, well, it's Israel allowing them to do certain things, or Israel turning a blind eye, that there would be armed people moving around and looting aid. However, now, and outright, Israel is actually confirming. So there was this report here and multiple other reports as well in Israeli media, confirming that these people escaped from Hamas prison, meet the leader of the clans that Israel is arming in Gaza. And in this case, they're talking about a man called Yasser Abu Shabab, who was a convicted criminal who was imprisoned. But this extends to other members too and other movements as well. Now, in this case, Israel is outright confirming that they are arming them. Israel is sending arms to these people weapons of all sorts that they need, and they're also funding them, and they are protecting them too. These people are calling themselves like the counter-terrorism unit, or sometimes they'll have other names too, to loot the aid, prevent it from getting to people, and stopping the people from getting the aid. However, there was a more blatant and clear statement coming from the previous deputy prime minister, who was allied with Benjamin Netanyahu, the previous defense minister, and he was also a member of a joint party both him and Netanyahu had at the time, Avigdor Lieberman. Avigdor Lieberman said that the state of Israel transfers weapons to all kinds of clans in Gaza, some of them affiliated with ISIS, criminal families on Netanyahu's orders. This is the first outright confirmation coming from an Israeli official who held top senior figures in Israel, confirming that Israel passed weapons to elements with ISIS into the Gaza Strip. Now, some of you might already, of course, know this. However, Israel previously supported elements who were close to ISIS to try and topple Hamas, take the Hamas government down. However, now they're outright saying that, and it's not only that website talking about it too, multiple other websites spoke about it as well, including the main Israeli Broadcasting Authority website with the Netanyahu's approval and the Shin Bet promotion. This is how the clan was formed in Gaza. And here they're outright confirming that Israel is supporting armed groups inside of the Gaza Strip to try and fight against Hamas and take Hamas down. Some of them, again, affiliated with ISIS, according to the previous deputy prime minister, Avigdor Lieberman. How is that succeeding? And is it succeeding? Is it going to go ahead? Is that Israel's best bet? Well, according to Israeli reports, you're talking about between 100 to 300 people. Now, these reports might be not very accurate. However, if they are accurate, we're talking about a very insignificant number. This is a very desperate attempt when Israel ties itself with criminals because no one else is willing to cooperate with them. And in many cases, these criminals have had previous ties with Israel or were informants, because the Shin Bet is involved in taking these people with them on board, and also recruiting more people inside of the Gaza Strip. Now, where does the Palestinian resistance sit here? What is their role? What are they going to do about this? And is there a prospect of these groups, including ISIS, taking over in Gaza? And that's it, taking down Hamas and create a big vacuum, a big situation where it would work for the favor of Israel. Well, the Palestinian resistance already spoke about this a long time ago, but now the confirmation that's coming from Israel is supporting the story and the previous confirmations of the Palestinian resistance. As a matter of fact, the security of the resistance in Gaza, they just released a threat saying that every individual involved in the ranks of the mercenaries is considered an Israeli soldier. Anyone who deals with Israel or is operating in areas under Israeli occupation now in Rafah are considered legitimate targets. They will be targeted just as the Israeli occupation forces are, using ambushes, explosive devices, and all the means available to the resistance. And they also said this is a confirmation of what its intelligence agencies had previously mentioned regarding the close relationship between the occupation and the armed groups working with Israel to serve its plan. So clearly we have a situation where the Palestinian resistance is wide awake, it's very aware of the situation, and they're not waiting for Israel to confirm. The only thing that this Israeli confirmation did is, again, validate what the Palestinian resistance has been saying.